Welcome everyone. Saturday night at San Diego Comic-Con. So happy you are all here. Thank you for your attendance at the Indie Filmmakers Survival Guide. We have a fantastic panel of indie filmmakers and Alan Ng. I love Alan, my co-host on the Film Threat livecast on YouTube. And he is very knowledgeable about indie film, sees a lot of movies, and we're happy to have him on this panel here. I'm tired, I'm sorry guys. I've been going hard. I hope you all have too. Or maybe I don't hope that. What am I saying? Let's start from here and with April. April, introduce yourselves and tell everyone about your movies.
Okay, I've been making indie films for a little while. My very first one I wrote was an indie horror film that got released by Troma. And then after that, I started directing my own films, and a couple that I've done of note, a couple documentaries. I made one called Stuntwomen, the Untold Hollywood Story, and Michelle Rodriguez executive produced it, and we had every top stunt woman from like Linda Carter's original double from the Wonder Woman TV series, and we had a woman who doubled Doris Day, and Pam Grier's double from all her Coffee and Foxy Brown and all those films, all the way up to all the women that are the top doubles now in the Marvel movies. I actually went to shoot at the Marvel set in Atlanta. We shot on the same stage with the Guardians of the Galaxy ship, which was pretty awesome, although we could not have it in frame or tell people that we were there, because we definitely knew some spoilers for Endgame, people that we saw there that were supposed to be dead and stuff. So yeah, really fun film. And I also made 2 documentaries about drive-in movie theaters.
Cool, all right. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Danika Lee Massey, and I am a documentarian. I'm working on my first full-length feature, AKIRA, the documentary. We just did our first week of shooting a couple of weeks ago. It's very exciting. I have made 3 hour-long documentaries in the past on my YouTube channel, the Wrong 18 channel, Epic History X-Men series, Volume 1, 2, and 3, detailing the history of the X-Men, all the way from their inception in 1964, all the way up through the Dark Phoenix saga in 1980. And I'm very happy to be here.
Great. Phil.
Hi everyone. My name is Phil Zlotorynski. I actually worked with Chris on a movie 20 years ago now.
That's right.
That is correct. Called My Big Fat Independent Movie, which I believe is going to be re-released soon as a 20th anniversary special edition.
It's coming
Blu-ray.
to Blu-ray
Yes.
and to digital.
Yeah, so we've been working on that recently to try to, get that enhanced. And obviously 20 years ago, digital filmmaking was just starting out, so there was some work to be done to make it look a little better for Blu-ray. These days, I kind of consider myself more of a part-time filmmaker, since I haven't made that many films since then. The most recent one I worked on was I co-wrote a movie called Girlfriend's Day with Bob Odenkirk that I think is still available on Netflix, sort of like a dark comedy. And then several short films, but mostly my career has shifted over the last 20 years in post-production. So now I work on mostly post-production services for marketing campaigns for movies, TV shows, that kind of thing.
Great. All right. Alan, tell us about yourself.
Yes, I'm Alan Ng. I'm the editor-in-chief of Film Threat, one of the top indie news sites and review sites. Yeah. Please clap.
Great. So, who here is making an indie movie or made an indie film? Awesome. Nice. We want to address as many questions from you as we can, solve your problems, whether it's fundraising, distribution. Those are the 2. Those are the 2 that I think we need to focus on. So if you have questions, raise your hand, and we have answers. Was that a hand raise?
Well, sure, I can ask a question. I'm curious about Tubi, because I hear a lot of things about Tubi. People getting their movies on, people putting movies on, making a lot of money doing it. So if you could give us kind of like a, synopsis or, what you know about Tubi, that would be great.
April, your movies are all on YouTube. So.
Yeah. Okay, so Tubi is doing some original content like everybody is, but they also are one of the bigger digital distributors that are ad-based. So when you get ready to distribute a film, especially an independent film, they have tiers. And so if you get to these people yourself, or if you work with a sales rep or whatever, the first tier is called TVOD, which is transactional video on demand. And that's where people are basically buying it to watch once or buying a copy of the movie. So it might be like $3.99 to rent the movie or $9.99 to buy the movie when you do the transactional VOD. And almost any distributor you go with now is going to get you to all the main places, which are Apple, Amazon, Google Play, exactly. YouTube usually now too as well. So you get to all these places where it's transactional based, where people are buying it for purchase. Then the next tier down they call SVOD, subscription VOD, and that one is kind of a dying breed. Originally, you could get on Amazon, which is a subscription service like Netflix, Hulu, all those, where you pay a monthly fee and then you can watch anything. So it's kind of dying, but now maybe it's coming back a little, but they shifted to making their own original content more than acquiring. So I equate that now to like getting a TV broadcast partner. Like a broadcast partner and an SVOD partner are kind of at the same level and the same level of difficulty now. And then you get to the next level, which is usually where you make more money in this model, and that's called AVOD, the ad video on demand, which means it's basically free on the channel and the revenue comes through the advertisers, and then you're getting paid either per views or per minutes watched. And that is Hulu, that's Vudu, that's, what are some of the others you guys?
Tubi, 3D.
Yeah, Tubi. So there's a lot of ad-based VOD, and Tubi is one of those. So they are making some original content, but if you make an indie film and you go out with any distributor, at some point you get to that ad-based VOD, and Tubi might be one of the channels that you go to.
Pluto, that's the one.
Pluto is
Yeah, I'll give you a quick answer of two resources. A lot of people wait for the big distribution deal, right, to come their way. It happens sometimes, right? I saw a movie recently that's in theaters. It's in theaters this weekend. It's the other movie that starts with the letter D. It's called DD, not Deadpool and Wolverine. And it's about a young Asian boy, coming of age story, really, really good film. That movie played at Sundance and was picked up by Focus Features. Not all movies get big deals like that. So there are other options for indie filmmakers. First one is a source called Film Hub. Go to filmhub.com. They are a platform that gets your movie onto other platforms. So you get, and it's a 80-20 split. You get 80% of the revenue, they get 20%. The other source I would recommend is Indie Rights, which Phil and I are doing a deal with them for a big fat independent movie. So look up indierights.com and filmhub.com. The deal for filmmakers is on indierights.com. They have their contract is right on the site. So that's what I have to say about distribution right there. I want to ask everyone here a question. What was your biggest challenge in making your film, or that you overcame, and how exactly did you do it?
Well, mine was co-hosting with a filmmaker who was constantly stressed out all the way through the process.
Yes, that was me last year. But what challenge? Money,
Yeah.
right? I think Danika, you had some challenges with that with your film.
Of course, yeah. So with AKIRA, the documentary, I decided I wanted to do a feature film and kind of step up from YouTube. And I was like, I've already been doing documentaries about art that people love and things that are dear to my heart, and I'm very passionate about AKIRA. And so I was like, all right, I'm gonna do this. and how do I do it? And my first inclination was to go to Kickstarter because I have a built-in audience with my YouTube channel, and so they funded things in the past for me. And so I ran my first Kickstarter for AKIRA documentary, and I really overshot. Like, I thought they would give more money for this project. I thought that it would do much better. So I had to end up canceling it and pulling it, retooling it, and then a few months later I brought it back at a much lower number, something that I knew that I would get. And so I had to go find more money to get it made. And so luckily, through my audience, somebody who had been watching me for many years and who I've been in contact with too over the years, he was like, oh, I saw that you're trying to make a movie. You know, I have some money with my family, and I would love to come on as a producer and help fund your film. And so I was really lucky in that. But also, when you do the whole thing, there was also dealing with family members who may want to be in on it, but then they ended up, it didn't work out, you know? So like, be careful when dealing with family members and things like that, for sure. But it all worked out in the end. It was very stressful. And that's also too, I mean, I'm hoping that I stay within my budget, but who knows, you know, if I go outside of my budget, I may have to do a secondary Kickstarter, I may have to find funding from a grant. I mean, there's a lot of paths up the mountain.
Well, I actually think the path to a successful Kickstarter is a failed Kickstarter. Seriously, it happened to me twice. So 2 failed and 2 succeeded.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, money's hard. Money's a hard one.
yeah, it's the hardest one. That and yeah.
I will say, 'cause I know, Chris, you use crowdfunding. When we did the 3 main examples I can think of, I'll go through them quickly. I feel like overall, personally, I've actually been really lucky when it comes to finding money. Although I say that also looking back on it, as opposed to what it was like in the moment. Because, for example, probably Indie Movie was the easiest in a way, because we had money, we had a guy who was interested, we thought we were going to be able to do this thing. In the beginning, we thought, you know, because we didn't know what we were doing, we thought, oh, we can do this for 75 grand. We'd do it like run and gun,
Right.
guerrilla style, and there was a guy who was interested, and he was ready to put up the 75 grand, and we thought that was amazing. And we fly out to Vegas, where this guy is, presumably to have a final meeting where he's essentially going to give the green light, start cutting a check so we can start working on pre-production, scouting locations and things like that. And basically he brought us out there to tell us that he wasn't going to give us the money. So we flew out to Vegas, and we go there, and he's like, let's all go for, you know, he's this like shit-kicking Texan guy. He's like, let's go out for a drink, fellas. And we go out, and we're at some club drinking, and he gets us all drunk, and he's buying all the drinks, and we're thinking, oh, this guy's cool. He's like, listen, man, we're all drunk, and he's like, listen, I gotta tell you, I ain't gonna be able to finance your movie. It was crazy. You remember this?
Yeah,
it was crazy. So
weird.
we were really distraught. But just by chance, I was at a job. I was working a job at a movie studio, and there were these guys who had a post-production company, and I just mentioned to them, you know, we were kind of friendly, and I just was talking to them, complaining about this whole ordeal that we'd just gone through months of waiting for the money, and then it fell through. And they're like, well, what's the movie about? And I gave them the script, and like, they thought it was funny. And then they said, how much do you need? And at that point, we already knew that it was probably 75 wasn't going to cut it. So I think we were up into the 100,000 at this point, maybe 150 we thought. And they're like, okay, we'll do it. Let's do it. Just like that. And that was crazy. Like, I'm sure that's not
the usual.
That's not usually how it works. Now, there were a lot of problems with getting the movie made, regardless of, once the money came, that was great. So that was one example, super lucky. The other was a horror film, or supernatural, like a psychological thriller that I also co-wrote. It was called Insight. This was back in, I think, 2011 maybe. And that script was sitting around for a few years before we were able to get the money. And that was just another chance thing where the DP for Indie Movie, he met some guy who was looking, he was a director, he'd been a working director for a while, and he wanted to do a a thriller. He had been doing like family movies and comedies. He wanted to do something darker. And he had money sources. Like, it didn't come from us, so that was another one. And Girlfriend's Day, that script was done that script was done in, I would say, 2005, and we didn't shoot until 2015. So we started working on the script in 2003. By the time the script was fully done in 2005, it literally took 10 years to find the money, to meet people and try to figure it out. It was just like contacting people and networking and people that I had worked with before. An actor, again, on Indie Movie, it all stems from that, I suppose. An actor from that had worked on Mr. Show with Bob Odenkirk, and I thought, well, maybe Bob would be interested in this script or give us some advice or whatever. We sent him the script, and he liked it, and then he started trying to sell it to his agents and managers and places, taking meetings, and it took several years after that until Netflix, after making a deal for Breaking Bad, they had made a streaming deal for Breaking Bad, and then they were also going to stream Better Call Saul, and so they had a relationship with Bob over a period of years, and he went to them with the script and said, well, I want to make this. And this is back when Netflix was just like, they just had a fire hose of money they were throwing out to anybody. Hey, you want to make a movie? Sure, yeah, great, whatever. And Ted Sarandos apparently agreed, like, I think it was like $2 million budget. So it was very small for them. For us, it was huge. So I guess the lesson for me was patience is the most important thing for this process in general, but certainly for the money, because that stage is so daunting, where you have an idea and you have a vision and you know what you want to do, and you think you know also how you might go about doing it, but you don't have the resources, meaning the money in most cases, the resources to do it. So it's really just not giving up on that piece. And sometimes you don't get the money, and you might have to come up with other clever ways. You know, now there's crowdfunding, which works a lot of the time, at least to get you partway there. I know a lot of friends who have used crowdfunding to get a certain smaller amount of money, even if they don't get what they wanted, and they go out and they shoot a couple scenes, or they shoot a trailer for the feature that they want to do, things like that, to get more attention and then get more money. So there are a lot of ways to do it, but yeah, it's always a grind.
April, challenges that you overcame, and how did you do it?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I can't think of like a specific challenge, but one thing overall after making a couple films is most people think about the production step, like the actual shooting of the movie as the filmmaking. And it's just become so clear making a film and talking to other filmmakers and mentoring other filmmakers that there's really 4 parts. That the first is all the pre-stuff you do, whether it's getting the script in the right condition, finding the money, finding your talent, who's going to be in it, all the preparation, which sometimes you have to do multiple times, depending if your money falls away or whatever. But that's such a key part. And then the shooting production part is almost the easiest part, and that's often where if you have friends with a camera, you can get out there, you can shoot, that's all fine. And I feel like for that phase is often where you can get people that are just like, yeah, I have a couple days off, I'll come help you do that. Like that's not so hard. Then when you get to post-production, that's harder because it's really hard to find editors that are gonna just jump in and do it, that are any sort of good editor. You have to be able to pay editors. You have to be able to pay people that are doing color. You need to be able to pay for your audio work. All the post-production stuff takes much longer, and it's one of those where you just kind of can't get people to do it. You know, you can get them to do it maybe for a friend rate, but that's the next hardest part. And then people think, oh, I'm done. No, the fourth part.
Yeah.
The fourth part is the distribution and the marketing, and that's also costs money, and it's also another big part of getting your film out into the world, whether that is getting, submitting it to film festivals and all those fees. It could also be paying a publicist, it could also be traveling to do screenings of your film. It could just be, anything to get attention on it. So you really have to think of your filmmaking in those 4 parts, and all those 4 parts are equally important, and the shooting is just one part. That's probably the easiest of the 4, really, when it comes down to it. So I think that's what I've really learned. That's not a specific challenge, but I guess the challenge is just having more, more of a view to the whole process.
Well, knowing you, I know challenges you've had. You made a drive-in documentary during COVID.
Yes.
Should talk about that.
Sure.
It's
okay.
really interesting story.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, going into COVID, I had that Stuntwomen documentary that we had finished, and I also had another documentary about movie palaces that we had finished. And they both, well, the movie palace one I was literally playing in theaters when the theaters shut down, and then Stuntwomen got released during COVID, so it was muted a little bit. And I'm a go-getter. And I was just like, okay, I had 2 movies coming out going into COVID. I can't come out of COVID without a new movie. And so you get, how can I do this? It's during COVID. What could I do? How could I shoot it? And so I had a little bit of a relationship with drive-in theater owners because my very first documentary was about the history of drive-ins. So I met some of them. And then during the pandemic, everybody was going to drive-ins. They were getting a lot of buzz. But I knew behind the scenes they were actually struggling, depending what state they were in. Their snack bars were treated as restaurants. They were closed down. Or some of them, they were social distancing cars, so they could only be at half capacity. And the studios stopped releasing, first-run films, so they were trying to figure out what could they play. There were all these things that were going on. And I was like, I want to show that. And I was just like, okay, well, what can I shoot? How can I do this? Blah, blah. So I basically got in my car myself. I had a mini drone. I had a little Canon camera, and I had a GoPro that I could do a time lapse, from day to night, from the drive-in being empty daytime to filling up. And between those cameras, I drove the whole country by myself to these drive-ins, spent a night at 11 different drive-ins, shot them from all their preparation in the afternoon through the night. And then between those 3 cameras, I knew I had enough to cut everything. And because of that third phase I was saying being so expensive, I have had to learn to edit myself because I cannot afford to pay editors for that. So over the years, I've learned how to edit. So I edited the whole film myself. I shot the whole film myself. I drove around and made the film. And we had a theatrical release. And it did play at indoor theaters too. But it also played at a lot of drive-ins. And I think that's another thing is you can reach out to drive-ins, you can reach out to independent theaters. They all book them themselves, or they have a booker that books other independent cinema. They're not like the big chains. So if you have an independent film and you think it might play in a certain area for some reason, just contact those theaters. They very, very well may play it. So I did that, I contacted a bunch of theaters, and we did an event for National Drive-In Day on June 6th, 2022, and that day I was the second per screen average after Top Gun Maverick, which for this little tiny film that I made almost completely myself. And then the crowdfunding where that comes in, because drive-ins have a season, a lot of them are only open in the summer, so it was like I shot it summer 2021, and then I knew I needed it on screens the next summer. I didn't have finishing funds, so I did do crowdfunding to get the money to finish the film. But what was interesting about that, and here's something you don't think about crowdfunding, I was getting some of the little ones, but then there was like a bigger financier that liked the project and had seen some of my other stuff, and he just said, how much money do you need to finish this? And he gave me over half the money I was looking for, just gave it to me, and then my crowdfunding was done because I had already gotten the first bit of it, and no strings attached. He didn't even want like a take in it or anything. He just wanted to support the film and gave me like $17,000.
Did you give him a special thanks?
Yes.
That's good.
Just figuring out. I guess the note of that one is figuring out what you can do with what you have, with what your resources are, with what the time are, and just being motivated. Because my motivation was just like, what kind of film can I make with little crew? What can I make during COVID? And that was the thing.
And I love the talk just because I'm a huge drive-in movie fan. I love it. I went to the drive-in during COVID every week.
Yeah.
Didn't miss it, so that's awesome. Alan, you see a lot of indie movies.
Yes, I do.
You see the good, the bad, and the ugly. What would you say is the mistakes that indie filmmakers make that are avoidable? You see a lot.
Yeah, boy, I wish you had told me that question before I came in. We talk about indie films as different than mainstream Hollywood films. Mainstream Hollywood films, there's no excuse these films should fail. For indie films, they're birds with broken wings, as I believe you like to say. And we're here to give them an uplift. I would say, here's what I would say is the biggest problem I find with indie films. You have the equipment to make a movie. Look, I can make a movie with the cell phone. And I think, you kind of need to go in, make your movie, but, kind of look at the movies you like, the films you enjoy, the stories that touch you, and study them. Try and understand why it touches you. Why do certain shots look the way they do? See what appeals to you, and then replicate it. And just do a little bit of research, do a little bit of studying, and then make your iPhone do that. Because I think a lot of times, we're maybe a little too focused on getting that script done, and we don't think beyond the script. And you just got to kind of go three-dimensional and just look. If you don't have lights, go to YouTube, see how people kind of do makeshift lighting. And then sound. Sound is the thing that's going to kill you. You can buy a $400 Zoom digital recorder and get some great sound from that. So the investments are very small, but look and think beyond just the script you write.
And can you, before we move on, describe what Film Threat can do to help indie filmmakers?
Yes, we at Film Threat review everything, review anything. So if you go to the Film Threat website at filmthreat.com, up on the top there's submit your project. There's a form there for your film, and we will it'll go with all the other submissions we get, and our writers will go look down them. We have a staff of about 20 to 30, and some of yours will probably get chosen. We have people who really love weird films. And the only piece of advice I would give you is make your film description sound really good.
Good. So questions before we move on? Raise them up high right there. Yes.
Hi, hello. Once you've got the budget, you've got the small amount of money, it's precious, every dollar counts. Just for all of you, what's the best thing you've ever spent money on? That was...
Best use of money.
Food for the crew, that's what everybody always says. It is always a big budget item, but especially if you have people helping out working for free, that is what you're paying them. So always think about that, not just your cameras and all your stuff, but if you're going to have people that are working long hours, make sure that they get food, and you can always have that in your budget.
There's responses.
Yeah, catering is a big one. That's something that I never thought about because I never ate. You know what I mean?
That wasn't clearly.
Yeah,
you're very safe.
No, I just especially when you're on your own and you're doing many jobs, you forget that people need to eat. I don't know, it's like a mindset that, at least for me, that I would get stuck in. You remember, I'd get stuck in this mindset and I wouldn't eat. I wouldn't even know what time it was sometimes. I'd just keep going and going and going. But yeah, if you don't feed people, they're going to be pissed off real fast, and then they're not going to do their best work. Or they could just not work at all. They'd just be like, screw this, I'm out. Especially if they're working for free. If they're it's true. If you're not going to pay people, you have to feed them. Other things of money, yeah, I would say just having a post-production background, definitely just don't neglect the post-production. One huge mistake that I've seen people make over and over and over again, people that we work with on the post-production side, there seems to be, over the years, there used to be this mantra called, we'll fix it in post. I don't know how many, we'll fix it in post. Well, that might be fine for a $100 million movie, but And yeah, things have gotten much cheaper, visual effects and things like that. But for example, there was a time not long ago where if you were making a movie that was even $10 million or less, and you screwed up on set and you've got crew and reflections and you've got boom mics in the shot and there was very little you could do without spending a lot of money to paint that stuff out. And you just need to, when you're shooting, you just have to be, I think what you were saying, is just you have to look at the bigger picture. You have to think not just in terms of what you might see on the monitor in that moment or on the phone in that moment. You have to actually be thinking like, all right, how am I going to take what I'm capturing here and turn it into something that people want to see? You know, it's not enough to have, sometimes it's not enough to have a good script, and it's not enough to have a camera that you can shoot with. Audio is a big problem. That's a huge thing in post-production. Audio is a very expensive mistake to correct.
I actually remember, Phil, that you were really militant about using the sound that we recorded. You didn't want to do ADR.
I hate ADR.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have enough money, ADR can sound great. If you don't, it will sound like shit. It's just, there is no, even today, it's tough when with narrative films. You know, we did a scene where there were people in a car, and we were actually driving in the car because we didn't have money to do it any other way. So we were just driving in the car. And I really wanted to be able to use all of that production dialogue. And I was so upset when I saw the dailies because it was just, there was too much noise. And we ended up we had no choice, we had to ADR some dialogue, and to this day, every time I hear it, I cringe. This is terrible.
I noticed it, but...
Yeah.
But you know what I'm at? This is a really good thing to think about today, because what you're saying now, they could fix that now. They want to be... People don't think about post until after they've shot.
Yeah.
I like to talk to who's my audio person going to be, who's my editor going to be, who's my colorist, who's my person writing my score. And I want to start talking to those people in that pre-phase, because they're going to tell me, oh, this scene you're shooting here, if you don't shoot it this way, this is going to be really hard for me to do the audio mix or whatever. So you want to try to engage some of those people really in that early phase and know who your partners are, because they're all creative partners. So yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, talking to people, and then also they'll tell you what their rate is, so you can be thinking about how do I want to spend my budget. You know, not just for the production budget, but for the post budget.
Yeah, it's not fix it in post, it's fix it in prep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pay for it in post.
That's a great, Catherine Hardwick,
Yes.
who was the director of the first Twilight movie. She has a whole presentation called Fix It in Prep, where she talks about filmmaking. It's great, it's great. So, other questions? There was one back here. Yes.
I know some filmmakers, like maybe use casting directors, and sometimes they do it on their own. But I don't know for any like the percentages of what, and if you're a performer actor, like how you would make those relationships directly with filmmakers if they're not using a casting director.
That's a really good question.
And how difficult is it for you then to find quality actors?
Well, there are more resources now, but Phil, if you recall, we hired David Glanzer. David Glanzer, who works at Comic-Con as our casting director, and it was well worth it. Like, he knew people, but today, I mean, you can go on IMDb and you can find, people directly through that.
Yeah.
The other thing is going to film festivals. The way we got Bob Odenkirk, I met him at Slamdance.
Mm-hmm.
I saw his movie, I liked it, and I kept running into him and I said, hey, we have a big part for you in this movie. Would you do me a favor? So we got Bob Odenkirk to be in the movie, just to, seeing him at festivals. Any other, so I think casting directors, money well spent, but you can approach people, and going to fests helps out a lot.
There are sites now too that I'm trying to think of the
Like
largest.
Backstage.
Backstage is still
Yeah, Backstage.
And I think there might be one more, but these are big now, they're big online databases where actors put their information in. Production companies, big and small, independent filmmakers, individuals, big companies can go in and set up like casting notices basically online. And actors can just review you put in all the information about all the parts, just like you would normally in the old days when you'd like fax the stuff out or whatever. And people can come into it. It's like a portal, basically. And you can also pay a little bit to like boost, just like on social media, you can sort of boost your casting notices to get more views, and people will come in and they'll sign up to audition. So there are a lot more resources now. I'm not sure how necessary a casting director would be, especially if you're just starting out. Like, especially if it's a role that you would need to pay for. That would be maybe.
But I'll say this: if a casting director likes the project,
Yeah.
and it's a short film or something, they might do it for free because they know later when you move up the ladder, you'll hire them, right? So, yeah, David didn't charge us that much actually.
I don't remember how much he charged, but it was
Reasonable.
Yeah.
Oh,
It
yeah.
wasn't crazy.
it
So,
saved a lot of time.
so always ask. The worst they can say is no.
Yeah.
So,
But to answer your question, one resource I would direct everyone to is the Film Thread Interviews channel. Because we talk to indie filmmakers from an indie filmmaker standpoint. And your question came up recently with 2 filmmakers recently. And it was basically, most indie filmmakers, they'll go to their friends, they go to people they know. But there were times where they just couldn't find that person. And that's when the casting director came in and they hired one short film, hired one just to find one of the lead roles. And, they found it, So, it happens more than you think. And as Chris says, that resource is available more than ever.
before we go to another question, Danika, I have a question for you about fundraising. You've done some incredibly successful Kickstarters. You've learned a lot.
Yeah.
Also, I gave money to you for the recent one.
I know, I saw it when I was packing up your little thing. I
Yeah.
was like, oh, it's Chris Gore.
But you have these great pins. Can you talk broadly about just advice, because you have done it for many projects?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, one of the things, like being on YouTube, ad revenue was never enough for me, so one of the ways that I funded my YouTube channel was through merchandising. And I love creating merch. I really I enjoy it. I like getting stickers and buttons and I like to design them. I'm an artist as well. And so it is a lot, like when you're doing a Kickstarter and with funding and you're trying to, I don't know, if you're doing physical merch, it is a challenge. It's not my first rodeo, so I know how to do all of this stuff, and the shipping of it can be a lot. But I don't know, it just feels so good when you have this design and then you make it and then you get it and you're like, wow, it's a real product now. But that's one of the big things with my Kickstarters is physical merch. I always like doing physical merch. And another great thing for Kickstarter is if you find somebody else with a project similar to yours, or another person that's, a filmmaker that's similar to you, look at their Kickstarter, if they had a really successful Kickstarter, and you can just kind of copy their homework a little bit. You don't have to start everything from scratch. I know that there was one in particular that I was looking at that was oh wow, that's so smart, that's really good. So definitely check out other people's Kickstarters, and that'll give you a lot of ideas. But I will say again, it's be careful with the physical merch stuff though. If you don't want to deal with shipping hundreds of packages, try to avoid that. I'm a sicko and I like it. I feel like a mama turtle, and I put all my eggs and then you take them to the USPS and then they're gonna go into the ocean, and it just feels so good. But that's not most people.
I will say, if you email me, go to filmthread.com/contact or look at the contact. Ask me for a crowdfunding document. A friend of mine put together everything he learned. He raised about $300,000 with 2 Kickstarters. I made a documentary, and I'll send you this document. So, yeah. Other questions? Yeah. Oh, wait. Someone there, and then we'll get to you. Okay, right there.
I was going to ask if if you're pretty much working on anything that's over like a half an hour or like is feature length, that's like gonna be a big financial commitment, probably into like the micro budget or bigger range. A lot of the times, like how do you justify that when the payout of the budget is not going to you until you get distribution potentially? Even if you don't, you're not making money. So how do you justify like all the, I guess, time spent or balance that with
passion? Yeah, I mean, you have to. I don't know. I don't know if I can speak for anyone else, but making movies was never a money thing for me. I just wanted to make things. You know, that's all I wanted. So luckily, I haven't had to spend a lot of my own money to be able to do it in the past. But if I'm passionate about something and I want to get it done, I try to find a way to make it happen. You know, just as an example, a friend of mine has been making this, what was supposed to be like a 10-minute Star Wars fan film. And it's now almost 70 minutes long.
What is this project?
I'll show you. It's almost done. It's almost done.
Wow.
But it's been going on for like a year. And he keeps writing new scenes, and everybody's working for free because everyone loves Star Wars. And, you know, they're building sets. They're going to Home Depot and like going through their dumpsters and picking up like stuff that's been thrown away. You know, just weird stuff. And it's all done. I don't want to say for free, but I think so far the total budget of this thing is probably around $1,000. He's doing all of the visual effects himself. And he's quite good at it, but he's learned a lot. You know, it's like when you're passionate about something, you'd be surprised how driven you can be to, like she was saying, you can learn to do things that maybe you had never even thought of before if you really want to get to that end goal. So I would say just keep going and try not to think of it in terms of what financial return you might get back, because that's probably not, in my view, that's not a good way to look at it. You have to stay in the moment and stay focused on what you're passionate about.
You have to be a gambler.
Well, for sure.
It's like you're gambling on yourself.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing I always think about. It's just like, oh, I'm gambling, but I'm gambling on myself. But I believe that like I can get it done.
You're investing in you.
Like, you're investing in you. And even if with this project we're working on now, even if I don't see any money from it, I believe that this is going to lead me to other things as well. Like it may not be a financial return, but you may get returns in other ways where you meet somebody and you find some new project or somebody wants to hire you. So it's not just money that you can get back from your project.
And I think crouched within your question, when you say 30 minutes, I hear that and I'm like, well, that's kind of no man's land. What do you do with something 30 minutes?
Yeah.
So it's almost like if you're making one of your first things, shorter is probably better because you're going to learn each time you go, and then you won't spend that much, and then if you don't make the money back, it won't hurt that much, right? But if you're thinking of like festival submissions, 12 minutes is kind of a sweet spot. If you start going above that, if you submit a 30-minute short, you're gonna, you know, they would have to like you more than 3 10-minute shorts, and that's not gonna happen that often. So you want to stay really short. But if you want to talk about monetary return, you have to be in feature zone, so then you have to be like 85 minutes or above, or else it's really hard to sell something that's sort of, so it depends on your end goal. Like if you just want to make something to showcase yourself, you know, just make something shorter and then spend less on it.
Absolutely, shorter I think is better. Like Alan, you were saying you never saw a short that you didn't think could be shorter. So, yeah. We've got limited time, so right here, and then if there are more, yeah.
How do you navigate getting what you want as a filmmaker or director, or even just a creative, without coming off as an asshole or a jerk? Like, how do you navigate that and still?
Well, these are all assholes.
I think a lot of it too, just who you hire and who you're working with. You know, like you don't have to be an asshole to those people because it's like, oh, you hired people that are chill to work with. Like I've hired some people that are just like I have no problems with. Not to say that's never going to happen, but it's also like staying zen and just like mellowing out, because you can get really wrapped up in a project and really like stressed out, and so it's like just try to, you know, take a deep breath.
Well, to be serious with that, there's a really good book called The No Asshole Rule about like work environments and basically either how to deal with assholes or avoiding hiring them. That's a real book, The No Asshole Rule. It's Alan's favorite book.
Yeah. It is. I love that book. I sleep. It's my pillow.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Under the pillow?
Yes.
You know how there's always been this thing about in the movie business that there's a higher level of tolerance for assholes because, well, they're auteurs or they're the artist, they're the this or that, and so there are a lot of excuses made for people who, mostly directors and producers, like, you know, the bigger they get, the worse it gets, it seems. But I feel like that's shifted a bit, where it's not as okay as it used to be for people to treat other people like shit on the set.
Right.
It's become less tolerable. I've been on sets where it was awful. It was just terrible. People miserable with each other because they were being abused all day long by the director, by the producer, whoever. And I think that's better now. Maybe, I hope.
Yeah.
I think empathy has, I mean, you know, it now comes down to personal qualities. Do you have empathy? You know, are you a leader?
Yeah.
You know, those are the things you kind of need to look at and kind of do some introspection and say, how could I be better? But of course, the greatest leader of all, Jesus.
We have time for, I think, maybe one more question. If we have the greatest question ever, one more, yeah, go for it.
In a situation where ADR is necessary, do you have any tips for getting good performances out of your actors?
ADR, best performance, yeah.
Well, my experience is that ADR is tough because some actors are really naturally good at it. They can watch themselves and they know what they did then when they were shooting it, and they're very good at replicating. It's almost like an imitation of, they're imitating themselves, basically. Some actors are really good at it, some are not. They can't match the performance, they just can't do it. That's why ADR was always so tough for me, because it always seemed like it's hit or miss, and you can't necessarily blame the actor for not being able to nail that same performance. You know, you want it to be just like it was then, and it's hard.
You know Peter Jackson, ADR is everything, right? Have you heard that?
Yeah,
That's while the scene is going on, okay, walk, run, what the hell, okay, lean over now, do this, like, that's how he directs throughout the whole scene, talking through the whole scene, and then he ADRs everything.
Wow.
Yeah, how could you?
Yeah, AI helps a lot though. I will say, like you were mentioning, like I've been experimenting with some AI tools, and they're actually quite good now for things like that. Like that scene in the car, if I had access to the tools that exist now, I could have fixed all that bad dialogue.
Yeah.
Could have fixed it probably with one pass. Just drop the file in, and it spits it out, and 90% of the noise would be gone. So there are a lot of things you can do now that will help, and a lot of it's free, I think.
But you still want good production sound. I mean, Alan
Sure.
said that at the beginning. That's
Yep.
something people don't think about, and it's one of the biggest things.
Yeah, you don't want to have to do that for your whole movie. That's going to be very difficult.
Pay for production sound.
And yeah, actually, I did all in Attack of the Dog. All of it was done over Zoom, and we just sweetened it. I couldn't believe it was fixed. It was nuts.
Yeah.
The tools now. So
Yeah.
we got to wrap up, but 30 seconds, everyone. Give advice to your best friend who's about to make a movie.
Don't do it. I mean,
Yeah, start with Phil, and we'll move our way down. And then Alan, say something funny at the end.
Yeah, I'll say something funny.
Alan, you have plenty of time to think.
something else.
I blew my load with Jesus.
That didn't sound right.
I mean, most of my experience over the last several years has been in post-production, so I kind of wanted to come here and just say, if anyone has questions about post-production for their movie, their short, if you're working on a trailer for a movie that you finished, or you're trying to work on marketing materials or whatever, I found that, again, post-production is one of the things that is most commonly neglected with independent filmmaking. It's something that you don't think about when you're raising money, it's something you don't think about when you're shooting, and then all of a sudden you are fucked. So, and that's where all the money goes. You end up having to raise a ton of money for post-production. So If anyone has any questions about that, I have some business cards. I'm happy to help. I also have other contacts in post-production that specifically have done a lot of work with independent filmmakers, trailers, features, TV shows, all that stuff. So I'd really like to help out if I can, since I've learned a lot over the years, and so that would be my conclusion.
There you go. Cool. Danika.
I would tell them that, and this is something I tell people for all sorts of life things, this applies to everything. Almost everything takes longer than you want it to. And just keep that in mind and know that and keep that patience. I mean, when I first went into shooting a couple weeks ago, I was reflecting about how I was finally shooting, and it took me a little over 2 years to get to that point. And there was so much nonsense, like finding a lawyer, getting the agreement worked out with the executive producer, Indie Filmmakers, and getting the bank account open, and what credit card are we going to, I mean, it was just so much bureaucracy to just get to that one point. And it was so worth it. And I was like, oh, it feels so good to finally be here. So just know that things generally take longer than you want them to. And if you have the patience, that's going to be your best friend.
April.
I think my note for right now would be that you have very good timing right now, because even though there has been these strikes and all the downsizing at the streamers and the studios, that can be a real plus for independent filmmakers, because they're not making as much content in-house, so they're going to be looking to acquire more content. And same thing applies on the actors. Less jobs out there for them, they might be willing to do smaller projects. So I think there's a lot of potential opportunity right now with all the people I've been talking to. So good time to make independent films, I think.
Yes, I think we're on the cusp of a new golden age of indie film. I really think it, because all the tools are in our hands. Last thing I would say, never quit.
Yep.
I've been working on a doc right now. I've been working on it for over a decade. What?
Yeah, you've been working on that one a long time.
Over a decade, a doc. I have a cut. I'm still working on it. I haven't quit. It'll come out someday. But
It's going to be great. I have to admit.
yeah, you saw one of the cuts of it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's called Film Threat Sucks. All right.
Oh, I just want to say, again, go to the Film Threat Interviews channel. We talked to indie filmmakers. I talked to Stephen Merchant for a half an hour. You spoke to Robert Eggers. We talk about filmmaking. And, you know, most of the people we interview are in the trenches just like you. And it's a great way to come and commiserate and know that you're not alone here, and that, you know, just we glean off of each other's wisdom, and that's why that channel exists.
Yeah, and you can learn a lot from reviews too. So as a filmmaker, you can, I mean, it can be brutal, but it's definitely a learning experience. And these guys, Film Threat, you know, like Alan said, they'll review your stuff, and if they hadn't reviewed a couple of my shorts, I wouldn't have been able to make the feature, and then, you know what I mean? It's like, you just take advantage of those resources that are available, because something might pop for you.
And Disney loves our reviews.
They love it. All right, thank you everyone at Comic-Con. Thank you for the amazing panel. Last night, Saturday, let's Comic-Con! Thank you.